Before we start, I want you to close your eyes, take a deep breath. My goal today is just to bring out your passion, your energy, your enthusiasm, your knowledge and experience for recruiting. I speak from the heart. I encourage you to speak from the heart. We're just going to have some fun, and hopefully somebody leaves listening to this with a little bit of motivation to keep going in their career.
Love that.
Today, I'm joined by Alison Kaizer. She's a talent partner at Golden Ventures, where she works hands-on with pre-seed to Series B founders across North America to build their early teams.
The reason that I exist is we have this hypothesis that the thing that's going to have the greatest impact on whether those early stage companies are successful in the long run is their ability to attract really great talent at that very early stage.
What do you think the difference is working in a later stage scale up, like pre-IPO, like Series D and later, versus working with a company at Series A, Series B?
Before you hire that person, just because you think they have a great resume, talk to these 2 or 3 people that on paper might look outside of the box, but let's do a really good case study with them. And I have a feeling one of them might actually be better.
Hey, RecOps friends, are you still losing hours every week to interview scheduling chaos? What if you could eliminate the back and forth, cut scheduling time by 90%, and actually get those recruiter hours back on the hiring desk where they belong? That's exactly why teams are turning to Rooster, the native interview scheduling platform built inside Workday Recruiting that finally makes interview logistics fast, seamless, and predictable. With Rooster, you connect directly to your Workday system. No extra tools, no disconnected workflows, and instantly let candidates self-schedule with one-click booking links. It handles time zone and language differences automatically, sends branded confirmations and reminders via SMS, email, or WhatsApp, and keeps interviewers, coordinators, and candidates in sync without constant manual follow-ups. And it's not just about speed. Rooster helps you see the true cost of scheduling inefficiencies with its TAS metric, so ops teams can track and improve the parts of the process that slow you down the most. Whether your team hires locally, globally, or somewhere in between, Rooster cuts errors, saves 10+ recruiter hours per week, and creates a candidate experience that reflects the quality of your brand. If you're ready to stop chasing calendars and start hiring with confidence, visit rooster.us and schedule a demo today. Your recruiters will thank you. Now, on with the show.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today, I'm joined by Alison Kaizer. She's a talent partner at Golden Ventures, where she works hands-on with pre-seed to Series B founders across North America to build their early teams. She places founding engineers, marketers, heads of product who go on to transform companies. Before the VC world, Alison built and scaled talent functions at high-growth startups like Ritual and Lunchbox, earning a reputation as the go-to partner for founders who know that great people are their real unfair advantage. Welcome to the show, Alison.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so stoked to chat today. Where are you based and what are you working on?
I'm generally based in Toronto, although right now I'm in Barbados. My partner is actually a Barbados resident, so we spend time here every year. What I'm working on is helping lots of founders with lots of hires. I was reflecting that this is really the busiest time of the year, and I'm sure all recruiters can relate to this, as all the requisitions for folks that you want to start in the new year kind of wrap up. And we closed a few new deals this week as well, which is really exciting. It's a little bit of everything.
I was reflecting this morning on those Thanksgiving sprint hires. I remember the Wednesday before Thanksgiving years ago, a top performing sales rep called me and was like, hey, I have this crazy offer. I don't know if I'm going to take it. And I was a recruiter and he was just like a homie that worked at the company, and he felt comfortable enough to tell me, and I was like, oh snap, this is a like 911, drop everything, save the top sales rep. But yeah, I appreciate that you have been under the deadline of the sprint to the end of the year. I think it's a lot for recruiting teams, and some folks feel it or they don't, but it can be a high stakes.
For sure, for sure. And I'm working across 150 companies, so I think it's even more amplified for that reason, but I'm lucky to be busy and to have so much fun in my job, so no complaints.
You have a really cool job, and it's an interesting role in tech startups, in recruiting careers. So let's start there. Let's talk a little bit about like your role at a VC firm as a like partner for talent. What does that mean? Are you a recruiter?
I'm not a recruiter. So it's interesting. I get asked this question a lot, and I will caveat that I know lots of people who are excellent talent partners, and their roles look very different from what my role looks like. And I think one of the things that makes it so unique is that I'm working at Golden Ventures, which is one of Canada's most well-known pre-seed and seed-focused venture funds. We do very early stage investing. We're generally the first institutional investment that a company gets. And so the reason that I exist is we have this hypothesis that the thing that's going to have the greatest impact on whether those early stage companies are successful in the long run is their ability to attract really great talent at that very early stage. And so I'm here to help them get over that hump of that incredible early stage hiring that is so ambiguous and so stressful, in hopes that it really accelerates their growth. So my role is I can compartmentalize it in a few different areas. There's certainly strategic support. So I have 300 founders on my Slack, and they're always messaging and asking me questions. And I'm there to support them in everything from understanding what a really good interview process looks like, to how to craft a great job description, to what I'm seeing in market in terms of role profile, compensation, really anything. What metrics should we be using? What tools should we be using? And I'm there giving them advice and helping them like a fractional head of talent. Even if and when they bring on their first ever talent person, I'm also usually spending a lot of time with that individual. They're often a team of one, and I can help them and really be a sounding board, answering questions and making sure that they're set up for success. So I'm like the go-to ear for the portfolio. The other major component of my role is introducing founders to the talent. And so I'm not a recruiter in the sense that I don't take on requisitions. It's not like a portfolio company can come to me and say, we need a head of finance or we need a head of product. Go find that person. And then I'm tasked with filling a specific role. I'm sure all recruiters are listening to this and saying, oh, yeah, then she's not really a recruiter. Being a recruiter is the stress of having a role that you need to fill. But there are certain needs that always exist across the portfolio, namely like really strong early stage engineers, great founding marketers, founding sales folks. And so I'm constantly chatting and networking and making connections between candidates and companies in the portfolio that have needs that are aligned. So certainly doing a lot of networking and end up placing a lot of folks, if not traditionally recruiting.
Yeah, but you came up in recruiting. Like you worked the recs, you cut your teeth in this industry.
Oh, yeah. I started in agency. Back in the day, I wasn't even in recruiting. I started in finance and I worked in management consulting and ended up making a pivot into recruiting, sending my resume in for a role that a recruiting agency was working on. And the recruiter working on it said, oh, I think you'd be a good recruiter. I think you have an interesting background. And I'm still in contact with her today. The rest is sort of history. But pivoted, started an agency, and then I was the very first talent hire at a company called Ritual, built a team, and ultimately had a global role there. And at times I had 70 racks in 7 countries, literally. So I definitely have been there in terms of the pressure, owning engineering and go to market, and then was in-house at Lunchbox as well, building their talent function from the ground up. So I certainly have experience being an in-house recruiter. And yeah, I've been there with the rec load.
Yeah. What do you think the difference is working in a later stage scale up, like pre-IPO, like Series D and later, versus working with a company at seed, Series A, Series B?
I think there's actually even a major difference between seed, Series A, and Series B, honestly. But so much of it comes down to a combination of structure and what an interview process and experience look like, as well as the profile that you're generally seeking. As you get later stage, you can expect a lot more structure. You actually, as a candidate, have to be comfortable being in an environment that requires more structure. And roles tend to be much less broad and much more, okay, we have a role, we have a headcount, we need someone that's going to fill a seat that brings a specific skill set to the table. And you start to see that a little bit in Series A and certainly in Series B. By the time a company gets to a Series B, and certainly later stage companies, they have a very clear set of requirements for a given role, and they might be looking for someone that has a relatively niche skill set that's going to come in and be a subject matter expert and own a particular piece of a much larger puzzle. When you're early stage, it's so different in that often you're hiring for aptitude, you're hiring opportunistically, you're hiring and just like learning aptitude, problem solving app. Not that those things don't matter at a later stage, but At early stage, things are changing so quickly that it's much more about we're going to be 5, 6 people, and we need folks that are going to jump in and be able to solve any problem. And so what we're going to test for is like ambiguous problem solving and ability to operate with very few resources available to you, which is a very different skill set from what you would look for at a later stage. And frankly, there aren't that many people, and this even goes for CEOs and founders. There aren't that many people that are really great at 0 to 1 and really great at 1 to 100. And the transition between those two can be very painful for lots of folks in every role. And so I think the way you approach team building needs to adjust accordingly based on stage.
Yeah, I think having worked in Series B and Series C and then worked Series A, seed, bootstrapped founders that had exited that are just driving business through growth and revenue but have a 10-person team, there's a lot of differences. You have to pick your battles as a recruiter and really understand what matters to your stakeholder, whether it's a VP of engineering or a founder. In the early stage companies, they really just care if the next person on their calendar is the person they want to hire.
Yeah,
It's great to have structured process, but I often see a lot of recruiters who want to get into that first recruiter in, or they hang their shingle and they be a fractional head of talent working with the founder directly. And it's very eye-opening because they've never interfaced with that level of operator.
totally. Yeah, yeah.
And so you see recruiters that are like, they're really great recruiters. And I think of big tech recruiters, they're a cog in a machine. The employer brand and great comp does all the work for them. And then scale up pre-IPO, they're like really good process folks. They care. They understand a lot of the breadth of the recruiting process, whereas big tech, you're just this little teeny tiny blip. And that biggest gap I see for recruiters, and this is the advice portion, is learn to know what your stakeholder values and pick the right hills to die on, because there's nothing that loses credibility faster than being like a process junkie in a company that has 18 months of runway. Like you don't need
Totally.
process at seed series A. You need alignment and consistency with the candidate interview journey. When we think about these large projects, don't waste your time on that. Spend your time getting great signal at the top of funnel and focus on conversion rates from the hiring manager pass-through rate.
Totally. I was laughing because I have multiple people that have reported to me in the past that went on to lead talent and report directly into founders. And everyone's gone on to do amazing things, which I'm really proud of. But there is such a difference between reporting into a talent leader and reporting into a founder. And they always come back and go, okay, I get it now. I get what you were dealing with. But it's funny what you're saying about interview process and alignment at an early stage. I'm seeing this huge trend with the earliest stage companies actually moving away from interviewing in the traditional sense and just like bringing people in for paid engagements. Come in for a day if you're an engineer and let's just dig in and figure out something that you want to build. See how we operate. Do you like that? Or if you're on market, come in, let's start you on contract for a week and just try before we buy on both sides and see if you like the way we operate. That's 7 days a week. We're slacking each other on Saturday night. Do you actually enjoy that? And if not, no problem. But instead of going through like traditional coding challenges, it's more, let's actually jump in and experience each other. That's not scalable. That's not going to work for very large companies. But for these early stage companies, it actually works really well. And I'm super bullish on that.
I am too. And Alison, this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk is because when it comes to the world of recruiting, there's no one size fits all approach. And there's no recruiting emergency room. There's no recruiting jail. Oftentimes, a lot of recruiters are learning on LinkedIn and you ride the wave of who's got the loudest voice opining, and then people then backpack in. What I see in like the learning and development for the field of recruiters who are looking to make that leap is there's no replacement for experience. And
Totally.
if you talk to folks who have done that type of work, they can guide and shepherd and help, because that's how operators work. And in a venture capital startup, the most important thing they're focused on is getting the right people in place. So when I think about your role, it's so strategic. And it reminds me of the 20-year software engineer who says things like, yeah, it took me 20 years to be able to solve it in 2 minutes. That's the way I see the role of the talent partner. Am I off there, or how do you think about evolving in your career to now do what you do?
You're absolutely right. And it really comes down to experience. It's interesting. A few things I can comment on and say. One is people always ask me, and I've posted about this on LinkedIn, but like people always ask me, what are the questions that you ask candidates? And it's really tough, but the answer generally is it's not about the questions. It's actually about having the experience to really know what you're listening for in a response. And there's no way around that. It just comes from experience, having spoken to 1,000 salespeople. I know when someone is communicating their metrics in a way that seems really effective. I can tell by how passionate they are, whether they're going to be an early stage builder. There's just a sense of, okay, I've spoken to a lot of people and I understand, and I can help founders, especially first-time founders that haven't hired in the past, because often they'll just ask me to come in and be a final interview with someone, and I'm able to say, I think this person is going to be really good, or here are some flags. And the questions I usually ask are so simple. They're like, tell me a little bit about why you were interested in this role. What about this company is exciting for you? What was the carrot that, got you to engage and be enthusiastic about potentially joining this team? And these simple questions and knowing what to listen for in answers is something that can only come from experience. The other side of it is having hired so many people, I know some of the mistakes that are very commonly made. And it's so hard. If I was a first-time recruiter learning from the ground up, of course I would want to over-index on a resume and say, oh, this person has great experience. Of course they're going to be great. Like on paper, they look perfect. And it's only after hiring thousands of people, taking a step back and saying, who actually were the highest performers? Were they the ones that were in step-up roles, or the ones that had actually done the same job in the past? Were they the ones that were really hungry to make a pivot, or the ones that had the exact experience and came from the same industry? And how can we actually test for that? Those are things that only come from experience and a comfort that you only really have taking those kind of risks when you've done it before and you see how it plays out. So that's what I really bring to the table with a founder, is the ability to say, I've done this 100 times. And before you hire that person, just because you think they have a great resume, talk to these 2 or 3 people that on paper might look outside of the box, but let's do a really good case study with them. And I have a feeling one of them might actually be better.
And I love the way you even just delivered that now. So much of stakeholder management for working with a founder in an early stage company is charisma and trust and a little bit of swagger. And I could just hear it in your voice. And that tells me that you know exactly what you're doing and how to work with founders. When you work with a founder, how do you know if they get it when it comes to hiring?
It's really nice. I think one of the unique things about Golden is we're viewed as a fund that really isn't paternalistic in our approach, and we're viewed as true partners for founders. And I've been in a company before where the COO said to me, be careful what you say to our investors. They are not your friends. They are not actually here to help you. And I think it's very clear when anyone decides to work with Golden and take an investment from Golden, they get on a call with me, that I'm really looking to help. And so I find that founders are actually very open. I'm part of diligence with almost every single investment, where we chat about what are the things that keep you up at night? What do you think your gaps are? And they're very comfortable telling me, I don't know how to do this. I really want your opinion. Can you help? And even if I've done this a million times, you've done it more. What do you think? There's a lot of real open discourse between myself and the founders, and a lot of trust built in a way that I honestly believe is unique.
Yeah, and I think when I work with an early stage founder, whether it's I've done it W-2 where I'm reporting and working directly with founder, CEO, I've done that a few times now. I've worked with a bunch of clients out on my own, working directly, and it's, are you ready to hire? Here's what that looks like. You understand the talent persona, you know the outcomes of the job, you have an understanding of compensation and what it takes to get there, and you've identified the process for what your interviews are going to look like. And if they can say yes to those things and demonstrate it, great, let's roll. But those are like the 4 pillars I look for.
Yeah.
And sometimes they think they have it, but they don't. And then it's, okay, what is the minimum viable process for each of those pillars that we can execute and deliver in the first week in that intake call or launch of a rec? And then from there, it's like, I got 2 weeks to build a pipeline. That's just like how I operate. If I can't fill a pipeline for a hiring manager in 2 weeks with software engineers,
Yeah.
I'm not a recruiter.
Totally. And it's actually really interesting. You hit on a very important point, which is I've been here now at Golden for more than 3 years. And one of the things when I became partner, we talked about ways that I would want to adjust the process. And now that I was like really committed, I got access to resources and worked with Julia, our operations leader, who's incredible, to build out some of the functions of the talent program. And one of the things we built was a feedback mechanism, essentially, whereby after a candidate has an introduction to a portfolio company, they're able to give me feedback in a very digestible, easy way. And I can consolidate all of that feedback, which means now I can go back to a founder who may think that they're incredible when it comes to talent and say, I have 40 data points, and these 40 data points vetted candidates that I've spoken to that I know are high quality that you chose to get introductions to, not like an ambiguous Glassdoor, but this very high quality candidate pool has said that you suck at giving feedback in a timely manner, or your interview process isn't well thought out and they feel that it's really redundant. And 80% of the people we introduced you to said this. Instead of me just saying, I think this is a problem, or I have a feeling this is a problem, I actually now have access to a really good data pool where I can say to a founder, you're doing these things really well, and let's double down on fixing these 2 or 3 things. And I know that will have a disproportionately positive effect on your candidate experience.
I love the index on candidate experience. With AI flooding people's phones and inboxes with spam, we're going to see this dead inbox where people just ignore their inbox. I think there's still opportunity to get signal through that noise, but the solution to all this, we're going to go full circle back to brand and marketing. Candidates are going to want to work with companies that have a great experience and how that company and that recruiter or talent partner makes them feel about those introductions. Because the reality is, if you're working in an early stage startup, or you're working at the VC level and you're placing a first AI engineer, or you're placing a first product designer or PM or VP of sales, those folks can go a lot of places. And what I see is they don't want a fast interview loop. They don't want 3 hours. They want to come in. They want to spend time. They want to socialize. It could be that week trial. It could be 7 calls. They want to demonstrate a case study because they know it's incredible high accountability when you're one of one inside a 20-person company.
Totally.
And I appreciate that you called out these work trials, because these folks that come in and out of these types of companies, let's just be honest, a lot of them are in a very financially secure spot, and they're motivated by more than just the comp. The comp is a lot, but if you can provide step-up opportunities, maybe it's that player coach from one company that's going to now be a VP of sales at 30, they're going to be so highly motivated than somebody who has been a VP of sales maybe 2 to 3 times over, and they're just doing it again.
Totally. And those processes are as much for the candidate as they are for the company. I think that's very important. The interview process should be viewed as something that is mutual, and it's really to benefit both sides. I think the days of, we're the company, we're in the pure position of power, and we're going to dictate the process are gone. And they certainly don't hold true for these early stage startups when you're dealing with very competitive processes. Every step should be a learning opportunity for both sides. At the same time, as much as we talk about candidate experience, I also don't think it's reasonable, realistic, or smart for an early stage company to have a perfect, shiny, perfectly thought out process. Because if a candidate isn't comfortable with a little bit of chaos in an interview process, they're not going to be the right person to come in at a very early stage. And the process should reflect the reality. I think it's very easy for founders at an early stage to want to sell opportunities and say that things are going to be incredible, but it's important to be honest. It's just dating. I always talk about this analogy where you go on a first date, you're showing your best self, and then eventually when you get in a relationship, that person is going to figure out who you really are. So it's in your best interest actually to be honest up front. Tell them your worst. Right? And if they're comfortable with that, there's nowhere to go but up after, right? You're going in with eyes wide open to the relationship. And the same holds true for recruiting. You should allow people to see behind the curtain if things are a little bit chaotic, if there's opportunity to build, opportunity to fix things, and let the candidate opt in and decide that's the chaos that they're most interested in participating in.
Yeah, it's interesting. The idea of ambiguity in the interview process, I think it's not something to inject, but it's something to embrace. You know what it's like to close a candidate or to get a candidate through an interview loop when you've got that high value intro and you're like, yeah, this is a VP and they want to talk to the company, but they've got an offer in hand. And it's one of those 9:00 at night, East Coast time. It's pinging the founder on Slack saying, hey, clear your 10 a.m. meeting tomorrow morning. You're interviewing with so, and confirming with the candidate at that high velocity. You just have to move super fast. And That's where I see like overbuilt processes, not enough communicating to the founder how they're going to interview. But the candidate should also be able to take that call at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. Or I can't tell you the number of like candidates I've closed over the weekend. I think that part of ambiguity is something that candidates are picking up signal on as well. Like I've seen candidates that are like, why is this company only interacting with me between 9 and 5? Or recruiters who only like log on 9 to 5 for their calls. That's just,
Yeah.
I think, a signal candidates look for. And it ties into the 996. 996, obviously, it's getting like all this attention online. People are outraged that folks are working 10 and 12-hour days. I've got a couple opinions. I think you and I may be aligned. But let's talk about the reality of the 996 in a VC early stage startup is defined as 9 to 9, 6 days a week. What do they do at 9? They go to the gym. They have catered brunch. They have a stand-up. Then they have sprints and whiteboarding sessions, or they have sales calls. Then they have another catered lunch, and then they have afternoon calls, and then they have a team dinner or an evening activity. The reality is most of the folks that are complaining about 996 or outraged by the fact that people are putting in this time for the potential of life-changing equity isn't actually measured by their own experience. Working in these early stage companies have a blend of personal and professional work-life integration. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing around like work culture in 2025?
Yeah, I certainly haven't seen all like the catered meals. These are early stage startups. It's not even that, but it's interesting because I'm coming from a position where I've been in early stage startups and I've never had hours. When I was the first talent person at Ritual, if we had a rec and there was an urgent business need, I couldn't be like, I'm on vacation. Too bad. The business is not going to launch in Hong Kong. It just didn't work like that. And similarly, in my role now, honestly, and this is not coming from a place of complaining, I absolutely love it. I have not taken a vacation day since I joined Golden. Certainly, if I'm traveling, I can say I'm not going to take external calls. But if a founder needs something and I'm their investor and I'm their partner, there's no such thing as, sorry, it's not a good time for me. I'm going to be available. And that means evenings, and that means weekends, and that means Christmas Day. And that's just the nature of my job. But the most important thing that I'll say to people is it's really up to you whether you want to opt into that or not. If you want to join somewhere early stage, that's the culture you want to build. You're basically the type of candidate where the decision-making process is, do I want to start my own thing or do I want to join this early stage startup and have that level of ownership? And it means we have to move fast and there's so much that needs to be done. And I'm going to learn so much and I'm going to be able to do anything in the world I want after this. That may require 12-hour days. And if you're not interested in doing that, no problem. There are lots of later stage companies that will take you with arms open. But if you want that early stage experience and equity, that may mean that you're going to work disproportionately long hours and 6 or 7 days a week. And it's really about alignment. My partner is a founder and we hear each other working all the time. And he was on a call with a candidate yesterday that was deciding between IC and another internship. And his one major thing he was saying is that at his previous internship, everyone was leaving at 5 and he'd be heads down working on something he was super passionate about, be the only person in the office, and it was frustrating for him. So the most important thing for him was going to be in an environment where everyone was equally passionate and enthusiastic. And during that internship tenure, he was going to learn so much and be around people that were equally passionate about what they were building. That was his requirement. He wanted to be somewhere that was going to be 12-hour days. He wanted, let's take a break at 4 p.m., go play basketball, come back, late night Chinese food. We're still working. Let's build something huge and amazing, a legacy company. And so there's obviously the match there. And there are lots of people that are into it. And if that's not you, no problem. Don't go to an early stage startup.
Totally. There are plenty of 9 to 5s out there. There are plenty of public service jobs. There's 10 other sectors in the S&P outside of tech.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like maybe I'm the sick and twisted one, but I'm with you. Like I like that level of accountability. Recruiting is fun because it's a thankless job. It's just a business process first and a job title second. I don't know. I think solving problems at an operator level for early stage founders, it's like I like being the hero. I like being able to serve up a pipeline of candidates that I like busted my ass to fill, or make that crazy intro where it's, yo, I can't believe that I found the perfect person. One of the best compliments I ever got from a founder. Yeah. Yeah, like one of the best compliment I ever got from a CHRO was leaving an intake call. She was like, wow, that was fun. Like on Slack after. It's like, yes, an intake should be fun. We're recruiters. We're like hyping people up. And then the second was a founder that was like, dude, I have no idea how these people are in your orbit. And it's, yeah, because I do this for a living. Like I'm out here doing this, sending cold emails for sport. I love it. I love connecting with people and finding out what motivates folks. Because if you're a talent partner, VC level, or an independent operator, like you are the glue. If you can create indispensable value around yourself, you're going to create a cool career in recruiting. And I think you've created a really cool one that a lot of people see and they're like, oh, what's a talent partner? That sounds fun. I want to work at a VC firm. It's like, no, you don't. You probably don't.
And it's so interesting when you talk about the actual skill that's involved in recruiting. When I think about my career, my role at Ritual is such a good example of this. It's actually so much strategy work, so much ops work. I had to really understand data, process, and of course it's sales. And then don't even get me started on culture and understanding people. The founders would come to me and say, okay, Ali, we're going to launch Germany or we're going to launch Hong Kong. You're the first point of contact. We can't launch without people. You need to figure this out. And I would put together these playbooks like, who are the major companies we should be, or what are the major companies that we should be recruiting from? The Rocket Internets of the world, the Deliveroos of the world. What are the time zones in which we can operate? Are there any cultural nuances we need to know about? Like at Ritual, we talked about skipping the line. In the UK, it was a queue, right? What are the things that we need to do to adapt our interview process to make sure that it actually makes sense? Oh, they can't download the app there. What are the things that we can share with the candidate up front so that they're going to be interested? Can we create videos? Are there decks that we can share? Like it's all the strategy and the operations before you even start doing the outreach and then get on a call with a candidate and are selling them. So it's really from a skill perspective, more like a GM, a country manager than an HR person. So I think it's interesting people that HR, you must have studied HR, you're in talent. And certainly in some organizations, it leans more toward that skill set. I would say generally like larger, later stage organizations, it does. But a talent person at an early stage startup definitely needs to be strategic. And my background is actually management consulting. And I think that actually lent itself very well to all the crazy problems I'm still solving every day. Yeah.
100%. I love that you said GM. This is interesting because I got laid off from a Series A startup that I did, which was they just went through reduction in force prior to the exit, which is pretty common in acquisition.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. And after that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to start this agency. And it is that. It was working with seed to Series A, Series B. I worked a couple Series C companies and I called myself a GM. I wasn't like I'm a founder or CEO. So no, I'm just a GM. I'm a recruiter. What do you need? How do you want to work? How do you want to pay me? I'll get you a pipeline. Because it's truly that. It's thinking like an operator, but you need to step on the field and get those at bats. I encourage a lot of recruiters to like really think about what they want to do in their career and how they like to insulate themselves from stress and work. If you don't want to work 10 or 12-hour days, like you're probably not going to be well suited for early stage or the VC world. But there's a lot of great recruiting jobs out there.
Totally.
What advice do you have for recruiters that may want to become somebody like you?
The best advice that I can give, honestly, is to always say yes when you have opportunities to be advisory or to help. I'm not in that position anymore to be able to do it because I'm not allowed to consult outside of the portfolio. And frankly, I have my plate full. But prior to this, I did a little bit of consulting with a number of different businesses. Some of them happened to be in the Golden portfolio. Then Golden reached out to me and I started doing some fractional work with the blessing of my CEO at the time. And a lot of the conversations I had were not paid conversations. They weren't paid engagements, but they allowed me to network, to develop my skill set outside of the scope of my full-time job and put me in a position where I understood how to be advisory effectively. And so if someone asks for help and they say, can I get some advice? Will you hop on and have a conversation and guide me? Always say yes and offer your time. Likely you will actually ultimately benefit more from that than they will.
I love that. When you think about the companies you built, like how do you think early stage companies can think about an employer brand or an employee value proposition when companies change and grow and they're trying to get to product market fit?
Yeah, interesting question. Something I talk about a lot with founders. I actually think it's never too early to think about culture and values. And literally, like you are a founder, you've worked with people in the past, you know what you care about and what you want to build. And from what I've seen, not to oversimplify, but nothing matters more to people than working with folks that are aligned in terms of their values. Culture, from my experience, can change. You expand to different markets, they have different cultures intrinsically. What culture looks like in San Francisco team may be different from what it looks like in a London team. Engineering culture might be different from sales culture, but your values and understanding what's really going to be important to you, establishing that early on and being able to say with conviction to those early stage hires, these are the things that matter to us. That's really important. Whether it be recognizing that you care a lot about candor and authenticity in how you operate, or you want people that all have owner's mentality and are going to be very entrepreneurial, or you want people that are really strong team players, or conversely, maybe people that can operate very autonomously and you want to maintain a remote culture forever. And so that type of independence is really important. Whatever it may be, having a clear sense of what matters to you, not that it can't shift down the line as the business evolves, is what's going to be exciting and attract folks at that early stage, along with obviously them being passionate about your mission, wanting to be building, and so on.
Yeah, and I think that's the piece, that early stage first of into a business group. Those types of candidates, those types of employees, they get it. They understand. When you recruit for an early stage company, you're your own worst enemy. Every hire I make is I'm shooting for increasing the average of the company. So every next hire has to be subsequently better than the last hire.
Yeah,
And I think about that with culture as well. If these early stage first 20 folks aren't going to be culture champions and come in with the confidence and the natural leadership skills, they're not going to be a good fit, because the culture evolves with every person you bring in. And I think people who
totally.
get it, and that's what they're signing up for. They don't want to just log on and ship code for 4 hours a day and have catered lunch in big tech. They want to sink their teeth in and make an impact.
Totally. I actually was on a diligence call with a founder yesterday, and he was saying it's really himself and his co founder. It's a team of two, but they've hired two interns in the past. One on paper, much stronger, had done better internships, higher grades, very academic. The other one was just pure passion. It's a gaming company. And this person was so excited and enthusiastic about what they were building. And he said, it's interesting. This latter candidate ended up coming in and being such a better fit and someone they would consider bringing on full time, even though on paper that wouldn't necessarily have been the thing. And so I challenged them and said, then maybe your values are about passion and not necessarily about academics. Like maybe that just isn't the thing that's going to matter the most in your organization. You want people that are going to break down walls as opposed to people that have all of the knowledge and take on a really structured approach. It's going to vary. Every company is going to be different.
Totally. Allison, I've really enjoyed chatting with you, hearing a little bit about the work that you've done. Any tools or processes that you have seen make a big impact on early stage recruiting efficiency?
When we're working really early stage, most of what we use is like Google Sheets, but Juicebox is a very reasonably priced sourcing tool. It's not going to replace LinkedIn, but it's one that I often recommend to founders because it's easy to use with natural language and can give you access to some very interesting aligned candidates if you have an open rack. So, big fan of Juicebox. And then certainly this isn't going to be news to any recruiters that are listening, I'm sure, but for founders, Ashby has really come up as an incredible ATS with a lot of integrated features that can replace a larger stack and relatively reasonably priced, but and can scale you through at least a few hundred folks, if not later. So love what I'm seeing happen at Ashby.
I love that you led with the spreadsheets, because my favorite ATS is Airtable, Notion, and
That's what I
Zapier.
use. Airtable. Yeah, that's golden
Benji,
spot.
when I say that, sorry, Benji, love you. Purple Rain, Ashby, all of that. You guys are the best. Shout out to friends. But yeah, if you're pre Series A, you don't need any tools other than some sleuthing and some Chrome extensions and great outreach. But yeah, no, they're great tools. There's a lot of diversification that's happening in the vendor ecosystem. The ATS market itself is poised to grow to, on conservative estimates, $6 billion in market cap by 2030, Right now, we're sitting at like 2.5 billion in market cap. So in 5 years, ATS market is going to blow up. And that means all the trickle down, nice to have technologies, the integrations, the kind of features, not full on product companies, but they build for a larger HCM. We're going to see so much diversification, and like recruiting got cool. Like now we have really cool tech that looks pretty. It's easy to use. It's a fun time to be a recruiter.
Totally. We see lots of recruiting deals. So I'm always amazed at what's happening in market. And yeah, there hasn't been one like major AI native champion that's come through, but I'm excited to see which ends up being the product that every single company needs to have.
Yeah, and you mentioned Juicebox, where you're looking at these AI sourcing tools. Data and sourcing has just become an e-commerce commodity. So what I'll be looking at is who are the players that have first-party data. Anybody can launch an AI sourcing tool tomorrow and index within a front-end UI of folks with software engineer titles. But I'm curious about email deliverability. All of these AI sourcing companies are actually just email deliverability companies. Who's going to squeeze the margin? So if Ben at PDL decides, you know what, I want to make more money, what are the data providers that these AI sourcing tools are using going to do? And then what's going to happen with candidates? Because candidate behavior always dictates technology innovation. We use these iPhones today. Are we going to have an iPhone 20? Maybe. Siri still sucks. We don't have candidate consumer agentic AI yet at just a human level. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen. And I think as data becomes commodity where you can get a Juicebox license for less than a pair of Jordans per month, it's just commodity. It's like electricity. It's like internet. What's going to happen is recruiters will need to differentiate themselves by what you described, the ability to make those introductions and understand human motivation.
Totally. And that's why there's so much value in if you're a founder and you're looking for investment and you end up with an opportunity to work with a fund that has a talent partner. My job day in and day out is getting on calls with candidates and explaining to them why these early stage opportunities are worth pursuing. Companies that have no employer brand that they never would have even known existed otherwise. I actually think things are moving so far away from technology. There are so many incredible candidates already that aren't on LinkedIn and aren't interested in participating in email exchanges. And as we become more integrated into technology as part of our everyday behavior, even more than we are now with AI. I think that it's going to become so much more about true network and human connection and so much less about just sliding into someone's inbox with a really great outreach message. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think things are actually going to regress into the old ways in some capacity.
I agree. I think it's going to move more towards that traditional executive recruitment model. Companies are going to lean more on third-party recruiters to help leverage the close, where I can say to you, if you're my candidate, Alison, I know you've got like these 3 interviews. I know I introed you with this founder. Like, I actually think this is a great offer. Here's why. That kind of leverage of the third-party external source is something that I see founders look for in a recruiter for these early, like first of type positions. Because when you're in-house, obviously like you're 100% biased. When you're slightly removed, yes, the candidate knows you have a financial stake in the placement, but there's just a little bit more pragmatism.
Yeah.
And it's funny you said old school. I've got an upcoming guest on the show that I'm so excited about. He is one of my former directors. He is an amazing people and talent leader. He is an OG internet sleuth. He's a sorcerer. He was on a recruiting reality TV show like 10 years ago, like recruiting influencer, like 1.0. And now he's not online. He's in Discord servers, sleuthing data scientists. And he told me that 80% of the team at Reddit in the data science group is not on LinkedIn. And they have exercises to scrub their digital profiles. So yeah, if you do the work, if you don't, then come on, the water's fine. Let's roll. Let's go work some recs.
I can't wait to hear that. I need to learn from that guy.
I learned from you. I hope some other folks did as well. How can people stay in touch with what you're up to?
I post on LinkedIn pretty frequently. I have weekly job updates and I try to post something weekly that's just in terms of my experience and my thoughts, what's going on in my mind. So certainly on LinkedIn, shoot me a connect.
Awesome. Alison, thanks for coming on the show. This has been a treat.
Yeah, thanks again. I really enjoyed it.